understand it. But the question is, what Jesus are we talking about? And that's the clear distinction.
What Jesus?
Are we talking about Jesus who was created, or Jesus who was uncreated, creator of all things? Like Thomas would tell you.
See,
Because
that's what you're confusing me, because in the beginning was Jehovah, just him, nothing else.
in the Word, John 1:1.
And then he created Jesus, because Colossians tells us he's what, the firstborn of all creation, right?
I don't believe firstborn means first created there. I think it means the one who has preeminence, the prototokos in the Greek. You go back to Psalm 87, and it calls David the firstborn. He wasn't the firstborn son. He wasn't the first king to ever exist. He's the prototokos. He was the highest, the one who had preeminence on the earth. I think that's the New Testament background to prototokos. But, for example, in John 20, when Thomas wouldn't believe, he said, "I'm not going to believe until I put my hand in the prints of his nails." And then Jesus appears to him, and Thomas sees him, puts his hand in the prints of his nails, and says, "My Lord and my God." And Jesus doesn't say, "No, like don't call me your God." What does he do? He says, "Since you've seen me, now you believe. Blessed are those who haven't seen and yet believe." So was Thomas warranted to touch Jesus and call him his God? Did he have warrant to do that if Jesus isn't God?
But see, here's the thing about that. The term God does not always apply to Almighty God.
So what kind of God is Jesus?
Think about Moses. Job told Moses he was going to make him a what to Pharaoh. He was going to be a God to Pharaoh.
Mm-hmm.
So did that mean Pharaoh was worshiping him?
No.
But how could he be a God to Pharaoh?
He ruled over him.
All right. Mm-hmm. All right. So same terminology. Thomas was following who? Jesus now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he would be basically ruling over him, right?
Sure.
But then also Jesus said that he had not returned to his Father and to his God.
Mm-hmm.
So if he has a God, who is his God?
The Father, because Jesus in the flesh comes to earth as a man, and he's supposed to be the.
He would still be who? If no matter how.
He has two natures, a human nature and a divine nature.
Okay.
But
I think I see where you're going with it.
Yeah, but like, so you said that Moses Pharaoh wouldn't worship Moses, right? Because he's not that kind of God to him, right? And Jesus tells us in Luke 4, when Satan tempts him, "You shall worship no other God. You shall worship."
It is written, yeah. Well,
nobody is to be worshipped, no being is to be worshipped, but the Almighty God, Jehovah, right?
Right.
Luke records in Luke 24 at the Ascension, in the same book, Jesus says, "Worship no one but Jehovah," right? The same book, Luke writes that at his ascension, and it happened while he was still blessing them, he parted from them, he was carried up to heaven. And they, the disciples, after they worshipped him, returned to Jerusalem with much joy. So Luke says in Luke 4 that Jesus said, "Worship no one but Jehovah." And what does he record the disciples doing at the end? Worshiping Jesus at his ascension. Why? Because he is Jehovah. That's the only way Luke could do that.
Luke what?
Luke 24, verse 52.
Yeah, so that's an English translation.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the Greek?
I'm not sure. Let's see if
The
it says.
Greek translation of worship is actually more defined.
Do you read Greek?
I don't read Greek,
Oh, okay.
but I've seen the Greek translations of things.
It says here in the interlinear, having worshipped proskynetes.
So the Greek translation?
Yeah, well, this interlinear does. And they, having worshipped him, returned to Jerusalem.
Yeah, there's another, I think there should be one, it uses this terminology here. I can't read this, but this is, let me just highlight this, and it has a different denotion, but some English translators use the term worship, but there's a better word that describes that situation, and it uses the term obeisance.
All right. Well, let's look at all of the translations.
Obeisance.
They worshipped, all right, NIV, they worshipped. NLT, they worshipped. ESV, they worshipped. Berean Standard, they worshipped. Berean Literal, they worshipped. King James, they worshipped. New King James, they worshipped. New American, they worshipped. NASB, they worshipped. Legacy Standard, they worshipped. Christian Standard, they worshipped. American Standard, they worshipped. English Revised, they worshipped. Good News Translation, they worship. NIV, they worship. Literal Standard, they worship. So all of these translators are not translating the correct way.
I'm saying going back to the Greek. Yeah.
Right, they're translating from the Greek.
No.
No, they're not translating from
Come
the
on,
Greek.
you know better than that.
No.
No,
Everybody
not
don't
all.
translate from the Greek. They translate from King James.
Are you really trying to argue that right now?
Hey,
No.
I know.
So the ESV, NASB, all those things are you trying to say they're not translated from the Greek?
I'm saying that there's been some interesting things developed. So that's why I just say go back to the Greek. And
Of course. Proskinetes is the term to worship.
No.
I mean, every English translation that I read you there, worship, 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 worship. Every English translation. And they're translating from the Greek. This one came before King James. It says they worshipped. You look in Luke 4, you worship no one but Jehovah God. So how could Luke say that they worship Jesus if Jesus already told you can't worship anybody but Jehovah? Is Luke warranted to say that? If Jesus isn't Jehovah, he's not. By his own words, he's not. By Jesus' own words, he's not. And it's just something to seriously consider.
What is y'all's thoughts on that?
So when they said they worship, what did they do?
I imagine they dropped down on their face.
They worshipped him, we know that.
What?
Whatever that terminology was back then.
Yeah.
We know Moses dropped down on his face.
We know you weren't supposed to do it to anybody but Jehovah from chapter 4. But that's something to consider, and I really appreciate you guys stopping by and talking. It's been good.